All right. So, those of you who make good observations may have already checked out the homework board over here and seen that I have the homework posted for today and tomorrow already. And it is odd that today we're doing 6-4 and tomorrow you're going to be doing 6-7. Because if you understand how numbers work, that is not sequential. But, here's why. I will not be here tomorrow, which is why, hopefully, you've seen on Schoology, you need to bring headphones to class. In all of our Schoology classes, and I'm not going to pull it up because I don't know if my email or what's open on my internet tab, but you need headphones in class tomorrow. You're going to be watching a Chalk Talk. It is like 18 minutes long. I already made it, already uploaded it. It's already there. I'm going to have a sub tomorrow because I'm going to be attending a funeral for a friend of my mom's back home in Coshocton. So, the sub is one that you've already had before. It's Mr. Hull, Hull. He was here like a week or so ago. Yeah, he was here when you guys took the mastery. So that I could only make one Chalk Talk, this was a selfish decision. I get this. I just decided you guys are going to skip right to 6-7. Then when I get back, we'll do all the other lessons to fill in between. All you're missing between now and what you would have had. Can you stop, please? It's just really distracting. All you're missing is percent error or percent change, which we only do like 2 questions in 6-7 on. So you will be fine, I promise. And the due date for the homework is Thursday. So if you have any questions, I'll be back on Wednesday to take any questions or anything like that. So, today, 6-4, homeworks in Schoology, and all of the homework's already up in Schoology, so you can work as far ahead as you want. Please leave the lesson, 6-7, and that homework for tomorrow so you have something to do in class. I know some of you like to work ahead and you'd be like, oh, I can do this tonight, I can watch the Chalk Talk, I can get it all done. Then you'll have nothing to do in class. So please leave it for class tomorrow. That will be what you guys do with Mr. Hull. Which is funny because the 8th grade math teacher is Mr. Hall, Hall, as opposed to Hull. So, percents less than 1%. Can anybody, if I told you that we had a percent less than 1%, like my intro slide there says that our budget, the U.S. economy, what we spend our money on, less than 1% of our budget goes to aiding other countries. So, and that is responding to crisis, improving health, reducing hunger, creating sustainable economic growth, saving lives, building a safer world, all of those things. Still, that tiny little sliver right there, this red sliver represents 1%. So less than 1%, like can you think of, if I said less than 1% of the 7th grade class, let's say less than 1% of the 7th grade class have 11 toes.
Oh my gosh.
Now, you wouldn't know this because everyone's got shoes on. You would not know, but hold on. So less than 1%. Well, let's back up. How many people are in the 7th grade class, approximately? 80, right? There's like 85, I think. What would 1% of 80 be? What would 1%, what does percent mean? Divide by 100, right? So, if we had 80 in the class, and you don't need to write this down, we're just talking. 1% would divide by 100. That gives you 0.8. So if I tell you less than 1%, that'd be less than 0.8, which would be less than a single person, so nobody. So when you think of percents less than 1, you need to think that we are so small, in some situations it won't make sense. There are certain situations where you can't really think about percents less than 1, because like you can't have 0.8 of a person. But if we talk about money, you can have as tiny of a percent as possible because we can deal with those decimal places and everything. Abby?
Yeah, so isn't it why it's 8/10? Because I know how like when you're almost like take out both of the zeros.
Yeah, exactly. Easy way to convert. how do we move the decimal? If we are going to write to evaluate what a rational value is as a percent, we first think of it as a fraction, then we go to our decimal form. Then from a decimal, to get it into percent, how do I move my decimal? How far does it go? So if I have 0.5, yeah, 2 places. So we move the decimal 2 places. What direction? To the right. So there's your trick. If you want to go from a decimal to a percent, we just go 2 places to the right. Yeah. Yeah, you need to bring headphones for class tomorrow, like we've already covered, but I don't have your progression to masters. I'm waiting for them to come back from the copy center. So I'm not going to deal with the sub having to hand them out to who needs them Wednesday. So don't worry about it. I'm not even going to put them in math because I don't have the progression to mastery. I didn't put them in math yet. Don't worry about the progression to mastery. They'll be back here by Wednesday, so I'll take care of you on Wednesday when I'm back. Yeah.
I know I have a mastery, but I missed a couple questions. Can I revise those?
Yeah, and then you can just turn in corrections, but like that won't change your grade, but that's fine. Just if you want to check if you understand what's going on. So if we think about half of a percent, and a lot of people start getting confused because half of a percent is not half of something. It is not the fraction a half. Half of a percent is saying take a pizza. We like to talk about pizzas. They're circles, so that works well. And they're round, they're nice and easy, and we can slice them, and they're delicious. So take a pizza and imagine 1% of that pizza. So if we imagine 1% of our pizza, like not even that big, right? It'd be the tiniest slice you can really imagine. Then do half of that. So then we would only get half of it. So when you think of half of a percent, first think of what would 1% be, then go from there. So half of a percent is actually 0.005, or 1/200, not 1/2. So half of a percent, any percent values less than 1% are tiny. Got to get that idea through our head. So be careful with those conversions. Half of a percent. Any percent value less than 1% will have a 0 to start here, because when you convert and move that decimal. So 1/4 of a percent, not a fourth, not 25%, 1/4 of a percent. So we're not talking about 25%. What would 4/100ths be? What percent would that come out to be? Was that a hand? I couldn't tell. Okay. Hayden, what would 4/100 turn out to be? What percent is that? It's just 4%, right? Because percent means divide by 100. Anything over 100 is that percent. So 4/100 is 4%, not 1/4 of a percent, which is what we're looking for. So this doesn't work either, since that would be 4%. What about 0.25? Casey, if I had 0.25 and made that a percent, what percent does this become? It becomes 25%. So that's not an option either. Question? So 4. Yeah, so 4 is the only one that works, and unfortunately I gotta shift all these things down. 4 does work, but realize how tiny of a value it is. Because this really becomes 0.25%, and this decimal still has to move, which is how I get 0.0025. Any questions? My advice is take your fraction percent, make it a decimal percent, then make it your decimal. So why isn't 1/3% equal to 33.3%? Because this is where people get confused. This is what they try to do. Colin?
33.3, if you multiply that by 3, it would be 99.9. It would be 99.99. It's not equivalent to 1/3 because it would be 1/3. First of all, it's a whole number.
Well,
It's
not a whole number. It's a rational number. Yeah. So let's put these both in a decimal form. This is in decimal percent form. This is in fraction percent form. So what's the decimal that could represent 1/3? So I can put this in a decimal percent form. Well, 1/3 we know is 0.3 repeating forever. So this would be 0.3, but repeating percent. So when I convert that to just decimal, not decimal percent form, but just decimal, percent tells me divide by 100. It's 0.0033 forever. Versus when I make this into decimal form, it's just 0.33 forever. So there is your huge difference. This value is 100 times this value. Right, Andrew? Yeah? Because you look like you're slipping. You need to do some jumping jacks or stand at the back, whatever you got to do. I know it's a Monday. Mondays are tough. In college, it's always funny when you see those people that have had way too hard of a weekend. They show up to class on Monday, and like as a teacher, we see lots of funny things. But they're really trying to stay awake, and they do this.
Yeah.
Where you're like, you fall asleep, and then you jerk your head back up, and then it just happens over and over and over again. And eventually they hit their head on something. So, a visual representation of what it means to have less than 1%. If you took 100% of something, so let's say our something is 200. We have 200 candy bars or whatever you want to think of. That's our 100%. And we want to talk about 0.75%. Not 0.75 of, but 0.75% of. We would first have to look at 1%, one tiny little sliver, and then look at less than that. Look at only 3/4 of that tiny sliver. So here's the really easy thing to do. Because this is 3/4 of a percent, what would 1% of 200 be? How do you find 1% of anything, Justin? It's 2, because percent tells me divide by 100. Then I could do 75 hundredths of that, because our problem here is 75 hundredths of a percent. So if you calculate your 1%, we can then just do times 75 hundredths, and that, will also get us our 1.5, which is the same answer that we got over there. Many right ways to solve these problems. Now, you could just do your division by 100, convert it to decimal form, do the multiplication, you'll get the same answer. But if you want to try to reason through it, you can just find 1% and then the part of the 1%. Because if it's less than 1%, you know it's got to be less than 2. Any questions? So percent work changes depending on if we're looking for the part, the percent value, or the whole. So we want to convert these verbal sentences into just math sentences. And if we get good at doing that, it will make everything easier. What's is represent mathematically, Jeff? Equals. What does of represent mathematically, Jaheim? Multiplication. So if I don't have a value here, I don't know what this is. So let's say P is becomes equals 1/4 of a percent. Well, I'm first going to write that as a decimal value of that percent. 0.25% of becomes multiplication. And then we have our 200. So write that to catch up, please. I can't do the math yet, though, because I can't do the math if I still have my percent sign. So my percent sign tells me to divide by 100, and that becomes 0.0025 of 200. Or we can just reason through this. What would 1% of 200 be? Well, we already talked about this. Shane? It's 2. What's 1/4 of 2? Or 2 divided by 4 just becomes a half. So whether you do this math and get 0.5, or you reason through it, 1%, come on, 1% is 2, so 1/4 of that, you just divide by 4. On this second problem, we're looking for the percent, and the third problem, we're looking for the whole. So if you are having any struggle still, I would write down so that you can look back at your work when you're doing your homework. This is solving for part. This is solving for percent. And this is solving for the whole. So these are the 3 different methods we have to solve for. So if I'm solving for the percent, like in my middle one, well, I know that percent is just part divided by whole, but then we got to convert to percent form, so be careful. So to find my percent, I do my part divided by whole, then I will multiply by 100. My denominator is 1,000.
So should you write like part equals percent times 100?
Well, so now we're solving for percent. So to find a percent, we know it's part divided by whole. So this then becomes 15 thousandths.
Would you like us to write this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm writing it, you should be writing it. When we multiply by the 100, this comes out to be 1.5%. And they've already got the percent sign, so we don't need to write it again.
So, but why is it like 1,000?
Because that's my whole value.
Okay. Now,
So the other way we can do this, if I don't know percent is part divided by whole, I can just convert this to my mathematical statement. 15 is some percent, and that's where the issue comes in, that we don't know this percent, of 1,000. And then we could use our equation solving skills to say I have to divide on both sides. But then this is still kind of complicated to work with, so that's why we know percent is part divided by whole times by 100 to move your decimal place. Solving the whole is where people have trouble. So if you want the easy way to remember it, you just take the part value and divide by the percent. But the reason behind it, the reason why, when we set this up mathematically, you guys should be setting this up with us. 4 is 0.5%. I can't do math with that, so I convert it to 0.005 times the whole. And once we start working with equations, this will kind of start to, you'll see it really easily. Like when you write these up here, your brain will immediately identify what you need to do. I want to solve for the W. It's connected with multiplication. To break that apart, we just, what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So whenever I know how to break things up or do the opposite operations, I can do the opposite. And what's a number divided by itself? What happens when I divide like 5 by 5? You get 1, right? So I get 1W. But I can't just do something on one side. I have to do it on both sides. So our whole value here, I think it's 200.
Isn't it like 1 because like 5 only goes into 5?
So this becomes 1W, which is what I'm trying to solve for. I want to know what is the W. But the left side here becomes 800. So 800 is my solution. Questions on any of those three? Those are the 3 different methods that we use.
So the whole is 800.
What do you mean? How did I get that?
No, I said.
Hold on. So we do this division. Because this division cancels out and equals 1. This division, anytime you divide by less than 1, you actually get bigger. Because think about 4, if I had a big number down here, 4 divided by 10 makes a smaller number. I get 4/10. So 4 divided by a number less than 1 makes a bigger number. Because I can go back through this problem, now that I know that it's 800, and I could say, okay, what if I don't know the 4? So forget about the 4. What is 0.5% of 800? Well, 0.5% is really 0.005 times 800. When I do that multiplication, we get 4. So I can check my answer using this value that we plugged in. So the really, to answer your question, how did I get that, is doing the division. So that's where we have to use a calculator to do these tough divisions. Yeah, you know, now that we're into decimal and percent work and stuff, you're more than welcome to use a calculator. So try the got it on your own. First thing we want to do is convert this into decimal percent form, then convert it into just decimal form so we can do the math. If you are stuck, please stick up a hand so I can help you. So think about what is 1/5 as a decimal. Then what's 1/5 of a percent in just decimal form. So is it the equals? So what we don't know equals something times something. So we know these things, so that's good. I can do this multiplication. I can convert this. 1/5 as a decimal. Well, we can convert that to a different denominator. So that could become 2/10. You know how we get there? Yeah, exactly. So since I get 2/10, now it's 2/10 of a percent. But then I convert that to just decimal. And then I can do my multiplication. So watch the process up here. So the first thing we do, because I know some of us are stuck. Xavier? Huh? Yeah.
Okay, so what I did was first I made 1/5 a decimal and equals 0.2.
Yeah, so actually the first thing you really did, even if you didn't think about this, in your head, you converted this to an equivalent fraction. 1/5, if I double the denominator, I get it into tenths, which is what I want because that's my decimal place. So my first place is a tenths place. I get 2 tenths. I get 2 tenths. So then, what'd you do, Xavier?
I did. I made it 0.202.
Yeah, so I can't do the math while I have my percent sign on. So Xavier made this 0.002. I divide by 100 to get down to this value. Times 2,400, and what'd you get? Break this up. What would 1% of 2,400 be? Well, if you divide by 100, you get 24. What's a fifth of that? 24 fifths, or 4.8. You did 1%, then you did a fifth of that. What'd you do? 2400 divided by 5. Not if you just did 2400 divided by 5. You'd have to divide by 100 again. So somewhere you divided by 100. Then you did the math wrong. Because 2,400 divided by 5, I guarantee, is not 4.8. 2,400 divided by 5 will give you a whole value answer. It gives you 480. Then, or sorry, actually, 48? No, 480. So, I don't want to walk through the wrong way. I want to review the right way. We have multiple options. This is just the straight up math way. If you know how to convert from your percent into decimal, do the multiplication, get your answer. The other way that I would encourage that you can potentially do is 1%. All you have to do is take the whole value and divide by 100. So if I get 1%, that's 24. But I don't have 1%, I have a fifth of a percent. So instead of 1%, I have 1/5. So I divide by 5 and get 4.8. So those are really the main two ways that I would take there. If there's another manipulation that you want to chat with me and make sure it works right, please come see me at AOR Extensions. West Virginia, our neighbor. Pretty darn big state. Takes forever to drive through. In case you've never traveled through it, it's torturous. The entire area of the state is 24,231 square miles. Water covers 145 square miles. If we want to calculate what percent of the state is covered by water, my part is land that's covered by water, and my whole is total land area. So to find percent covered by water, we're going to do water amount divided by total. And of course, we're going to have to multiply by 100 to get it into percent form. So we set up our 145 divided by the 24,200, excuse me. This becomes a very, 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 very small decimal value. Precisely. Be careful. When I ask you to round, I ask you to round after you convert to percent form. So I always write a lot of decimals, and then I can take them off later. But if you don't write enough, and then you realize, oh crap, I need more, it's harder to go back than it is to just drop them off. So this is not my percent. This is my rate. What, Abby?
You need to round it.
No, not round it. I need to do something before I round it. Shane? I have to do this multiplication by 100 to move my decimal point, and we get 0.0, sorry, not 0, 0.598 as a percent if I round it to 3 decimal places. Yeah.
That's like the first 3 digits of my mom's phone number. No.
598. Any questions? No preguntas? Try the got it on your own. Talking about Colorado. Now the state is larger, but they have more water. So actually, hold on, hang on for just a second. Make a prediction here. So if the water in West Virginia is 145 square miles compared to 371. The state size, 24,000 square miles compared to 104 square miles. Try to predict, will Colorado's percentage be higher than West Virginia or lower? Just keep that prediction in your head. Then solve it out. Try this out on your own. Might have magical healing powers. Oh my gosh, it works. Let's try this again. Oh my gosh, it works.
Oh my.
Right now. Come on. Even if you know it. Yeah, question. We help. So we're going to go part divided by our whole. Then we have to convert the percent form so we can move our decimal 2 places. So what's your part here? What are we looking at? Covered by water, right? So part is the covered by water. Part. Whole is the entire state. Whole. Part divided by the whole. And then we multiply by 100 to put it in 2%. Yeah, or totally. Whatever you want to say, you can say whole. Percent is always part divided by whole. Here, our part is 371. Our whole is 104,100. By the way, nobody asked this in this class, but somebody in a different class asked, what about the square? When am I going to square? That square is on the units, not on the number. So that square does nothing to the number. So we do our division. 371 divided by 104,100. What's my decimal value that I get there? Shane? 0.0035638. Hold on, 356. 3563881. 881. Sweet. That is enough. Then we're still not done. We've got to convert to percent by moving that decimal 2 places, 0.356. And because this is a 3, the 6 just stays how it is. And we are done. Any questions on how we got this? Xavier?
Oh, I know. I remember what you said about the water being smaller or bigger. It's because since it's a bigger state, that means you're gonna have a lower amount of water since it's about the same amount as that, except that that's a smaller state. So it would be more.
Yeah. Because the difference in state size is why this percent is even lower than West Virginia. Because if you compare state size, Colorado is 4 times as big as West Virginia. The water, it does not have 4 times as much water. So it has less percentage of water, even though it has more actual water. No. Denver is a town.
Isn't Denver like the capital?
I'm not 100% certain.
I'm not.
All right.